I'm Sarah Squires, the Narcissistic Abuse and Parental Alienation Specialist. Today I want to talk to you about the impact that parental alienation has on children. And none of this is going to be a surprise, but it's important that we talk about it because even though we know narcissists don't give a rat's ass what the damage is, we need to be telling other people who are around the child, the professionals, what the impact of this is and what they're helping to happen to these children. So the first thing I want to talk about is attachment. John Bowlby did a lot of work around the importance of attachment, and it's been proven that everyone, each one of us, when we're born, we form an attachment to those around us, and those who are around us the most are the strongest attachments that we form. So obviously parents, their mother and their father, and the quality of that attachment can be secure. So when they cry, their mum or their dad goes to them and they comfort them. It can be insecure, where no one goes to them and they're left feeling very anxious about it when they're very young, and they learn no one's going to come when they cry. Or it could be ambivalent, whereby they don't care, they're not bothered whether or not anyone's there. And you see this sort of in toddlers, that they're not bothered by strangers, which they should be, and they learn that from their parents. So there's three different types of attachment, but regardless of the quality of that attachment, it is still an attachment. It is like an elastic band. It is there regardless. And when that elastic band is broken, that attachment is broken, it causes both physiological damage to the brain and psychological damage as well. It affects their self-esteem. It can affect the brain development in the frontal lobe, where emotions and behaviors are impacted. It can affect their hippocampus, which is all about the memory. There's lots of areas of the brain that this can damage when that attachment broken. And the younger the child is when parental alienation occurs, the more damage is done, because that's when they're developing. That's when they're learning these things. They're learning their internal working model. They're finding out who they are, who they can rely on, what the world around them is. It a scary place, or is it an okay place? Because there's security in my caregivers. And so the younger the child is when alienation happens, and more damage happens to their brain and to their emotional development. So it's really important that we know the damage that is done so that we can prevent this from being allowed. Because I'm a child protection social worker, and even in cases where we knew there was physical, emotional, sexual abuse going on, we had to handle the removal of children very, very carefully, because we knew the damage that was done. And yet time and time again I'm seeing from professionals that they're allowing this sudden break of that attachment bond. They're allowing it to all of a sudden, parents aren't allowed to see their children anymore for no good reason, and that attachment is just suddenly broken. And the damage that is being done and being allowed to be done, when it goes against everything, it doesn't make any logical sense to me how they can be letting this happen. But anyway, I've digressed slightly on that one. But the next thing I want to talk to you about is trust. Obviously, again, when we are growing up, we learn to trust those around us because they're there for us. When we need them, they're there. When something happens, they're there for us. When parental alienation happens, not only is one parent no longer there, and if they're young, they're not going to understand the reasons for that. All they're going to know is this parent is suddenly no longer there. And then they're also dealing with the fact that the other parent is probably telling them a lot of lies, both about themselves, but also about the other parent. And so this child is learning, well, that doesn't make sense. That's not how I remember. If it's an older child and they have memories, they're going to think, well, that's not what I remember of them. So what's going on here? And it's going to affect their trust of everyone. And obviously in later life, this has massive impacts. They're not going to trust the police. They're not going to trust authorities. They're not going to trust themselves. They're not going to trust anyone. So they're not going to have relationships. They're probably going to struggle with employment. They're probably get in trouble with the law. So this is massive. These are massive impacts that this is having. Next one is guilt. Children won't show it. You'll have conversations if you're a professional watching this, which great. I'm really pleased that you are. The children that you speak to, they probably won't demonstrate any guilt, and you should know as a professional that that isn't normal, because a child who's attached to and has feelings for a parent will feel guilt. They will feel guilt at things that they're saying about them. They won't want to say anything horrible about their parent. You work with abused children, you know that they do whatever they can to protect the abuser. So if they're speaking in those terms of I don't want to see them anymore, they're all bad, that should be a warning sign, a massive warning sign, because we know that that's not how children think. We know that they don't have good or bad thinking. They see everyone has good and bad in them, and children see that. They see that, oh, little Joey stole my toy. That doesn't mean that you hate them forever and they're an awful person. They can deal with that particular situation. So when children are saying I don't want to see them, I don't like them, they've done this, that and the other, that should be an enormous warning sign, because that's not how children think. They feel guilt when they're saying things, when they're talking bad about someone. They don't like that. They don't like to say those things. They feel the guilt, and even if they're not willing to say it out loud, they're internalizing that guilt, and again, they're therefore feeling that they're a bad person. They're saying these things, so they're the bad person, and that's going to affect their self-esteem, and obviously, like we've just covered, it's going to have massive implications for how they see themselves. They see themselves as faulty because they're telling lies, they're saying these things. Then they're going to go out into the big wide world and think that they are faulty, that everything's their fault. They're going to be angry about that, and they're going to either hurt themselves or they're going to hurt other people. The next one is that it is abuse. It is, at the very least, it is emotional abuse, because a parent is using their power of being a parent to hurt someone else, the alienated parent, but also to hurt their own children, and they don't see that, or if they do, then they don't care that they see that, because a child does need both parents. And like I said, I've worked in child protection cases where we've had to handle the removal very carefully, because the child still wants to be in a relationship with that child, and it takes not many children are removed for that very, very reason. You can Google it. You can go on Joseph Rowntree Foundation. They do a lot of work around this. Separation for children, whether it be through divorce or through child abuse and removal, is very damaging, and so therefore we don't do that very often. But yeah, in parental alienation cases, we are letting this happen. We are letting court orders be applied for, which in intents purposes is removing a parent from this child's life. But we're doing it without any of the same safeguarding concerns that we would have if we were removing them in a normal sexual abuse case. It's like we switch off and we don't go through the same processes. But it is abuse. It's abuse of that child's trust. It's abuse of that child's emotions. It's abuse of it's neglectful as well, because they're not putting those child's needs first. They're not saying, you know what, I am really angry and I really hate my ex for whatever they've done, whatever reason. I hate them, but my kids still love them and I have to think about that. They're not doing that. They're just going, I hate them, therefore I will win. I will hurt them. It doesn't matter. Collateral damage. Everyone else is just collateral damage in their desire to hurt. And that is abuse. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, it is abuse. And if you're a professional watching this, it is abuse. It is abuse. Okay? There is no way it can be denied that removing a parent, and I work with the people that are experiencing this, and I know that you're being told by the child themselves, I don't want to see them anymore. But you should know as a professional that that's what abusers do to the kids. They say to the kids, oh, if you tell anyone, or if you say that you want to see your mum, or you say that you want to see your dad, then we won't be able to look after you anymore, and you'll end up in a foster home, and you'll never see any of these people again. You know that that's what abusers say. You know that that's what child sex offenders say to their victims. They give them a horrible outcome to get them to keep quiet. And yet you're listening to these children say, I don't want to see my parent anymore. You should know that that isn't natural. You should know that that should be a massive Nina Nina. That is not normal. And yet you're letting that happen. You're hearing that and you're taking it at face value instead of actually thinking, well, actually, children don't think like that. That's not how children, and listen to their language that they use as well. I'm not going to go full into that. I will end up on my soapbox. The final thing for me is that you are letting, like I said, this is if you are a professional, you are letting the child stay with someone who is incapable of putting their needs first. You are leaving them in the hands of a child abuser. And that is on you. And when the time comes, when that child grows up and sees what has gone on, because they will, because we have an innate desire to know who our parents are. We want to know where we came from. We want to know the answers to those questions that have kept us awake. So these children who are being alienated from their parents' lives, but as they grow older, they're going to start thinking, well, why didn't my mum or my dad want to be around? Why was I not allowed to see them? Why weren't they there? And they're going to go looking for those answers, and they're going to knock on their parents' door, no matter what lies they've been told, no matter how brainwashed they've been. This is innate. This is a basic human need. They are going to go and knock on that door, and they're going to ask their parent, and they're going to tell them everything. And the veil is going to be lifted, and they're going to blame the professionals. You're going to ruin their trust in those around them, their parents, the professionals around them. They're never going to trust again because that's what you've allowed to happen. And yeah, that sounds harsh, and I might get some slack for that, but I'm just emotional because it breaks my heart that these children are being put in this situation where they're hurting themselves and yet it's being ignored, and it's not fair, it's not right, and I don't want it to carry on. So there you go. That's the impact of child abuse. It is child abuse. Impact of parental alienation. If you've got any comments, please do put them below. Share this video, get it out there, share them with professionals on your case if you need to, if you think it will help. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch it. Take care and speak soon.